The transfer portal, still buzzing. Like I said, we're not getting as much movement when it comes to the big names that are entering. We still have a little bit of juice there, but it's more so an intel side of things right now. And Cam Ward is a name that's been in the portal. He's the number one quarterback in the transfer portal. Took a visit to Miami. News broke yesterday that he is going to take a visit to Florida State. Now, Jesse Simonson has an article out right now on on3.com talking about why Florida State is the superior option for Cam Ward. And we were talking about, before we got ready for the show today, what are going to be the conference title winners for next year when it comes to those teams that are like the early favorites? So myself and Trey Annity in the other room right now on the whiteboard. Oh, okay, maybe we lean this way in the SEC. Maybe we lean this way right now in the Big Ten. Not going to give you the exact picks right now because that would be foolish of us. But when we talk about the ACC, I went, back and forth for a minute on a couple of teams. And eventually I just said Cam Ward is winning the ACC. Because that's, I think, how impactful he can be. You plug him into a really elite roster, like I say elite roster, a really young, up-and-coming, and talented roster like Mario Cristobal is bringing at Miami. A couple of freshmen there on both sides of the line of scrimmage, Ruben Bain and Francis Mauigoa, that are going to get even better from what they were this past season, which were true freshman All-Americans, according to us here at On3. Also, you have a recruiting class from 2023 that they were a part of that's also going to cycle up. And then 2024 is also looking at this point in time of us being live, a top 10 class. So all that's to say for Miami, they're looking pretty good. You plug Cam Ward into that operation, you feel pretty good about your chances. They gave the ball away 2 times a game a season ago. You imagine if they're able to just be a little bit more prolific offensively, even just take better care of the football offensively, how much better are they? Because they were 8-4 last season, or a knee away from being 8-4 last season. Finished 7-5, woulda, shoulda, coulda. I get it. But if you take better care of the football and you can operate Shannon Dawson's offense a little bit more effectively, I think you could be cooking with gas there. So that's Miami. But when it comes to Florida State, I see the logic. I do. They're going to have DJU for a visit at this point in time of us being live as well in Tallahassee. But Cam Ward, you'd have to think, is the number one guy for a lot of these teams on their board. That's my assumption. And if I'm Cam Ward, I think the appeal for Florida State is a couple of things. One, it's a stable operation. Like Miami, I just said how talented that roster is, but they're still up and coming. They're still getting that thing off the ground. They're in the early stages. Florida State, they're a few years ahead of that. They probably should have made the college football playoff this past season. They probably should have, been in the national title conversation this past season. So what does that tell you? Mike Norvell and what he's built there, they're now at cruising altitude. Jordan Travis obviously no longer playing quarterback there. You plug in a guy of Cam Ward's caliber and his talent, you kind of pick up where you left off, would be the thought. So you're not in this upward swing. You're in the spot where you're already like a stable operation, stable organization. Other part of this, if you're Cam Ward, you want to go somewhere where there is proof of concept. And not just at the quarterback position, because it'd be nice to play for an offensive head coach in Mike Norvell, and his offense has averaged 35 points a game the last 2 years, but also with transfer portal guys. We said this about DJU. The same thing is true for Cam Ward. I feel more confident going to a place like Florida State because of the success of transfer guys. Keon Coleman, seamless transition. Jaheim Bell, seamless transition. Johnny Wilson, seamless transition. Like, that's kind of been the thing for Florida State, is they have portal guys plug into their roster right away and have success. So wherever he ends up going, we'll obviously talk about it, but Cam Ward is taking a visit to Florida State, took a visit to Miami already. A very, very big fish still out there in the transfer portal pond. This was news that broke last night. Texas quarterback Malik Murphy, at the time of us being live, has announced that he plans to enter. So if he pops up after the show in the portal, that will mean that he's officially in there, but he's announced he plans to enter. I think there's a fair amount of legitimacy to this. Here's the interesting thing about it. The way the calendar works, Malik Murphy will not be with Texas during their college football playoff run. And you don't fault Malik Murphy. I think you more so fault the college football calendar, because Malik Murphy, let's call a spade a spade. When he stepped in there for them this past season, when Quinn Ewers went down and kept that ship afloat and kept them undefeated during his time, rather. I mean, I understand they had the loss to Oklahoma, but he was undefeated as a starter for Texas. Like, they're not in the college football playoff without Malik Murphy. And so you kind of feel bad for the guy, and you feel bad for Texas that they can't have a proven commodity like him as a backup quarterback. Because think about this. God forbid something happened to Quinn Ewers. And we don't root for that. We hope that doesn't happen. Obviously, I think all the college football landscape does. They hope Quinn Ewers is able to stay healthy. But if he ends up going down, You pass the keys in a playoff game to Arch Manning. Take it a step further. It's been reported that Quinn Ewers is 90% coming back to Texas next year. Let's just say they win it all. Let's get crazy and say Texas wins the whole darn thing. And Quinn Ewers says, you know what? That NFL draft stock of mine is looking pretty good. Maybe I'll go test the waters a little bit. Maybe I'll jump in and try the NFL draft. That 10% hits, and it's like, okay, well, now you got Arch Manning running the show your first year in the SEC. So this is a pretty big domino. I wouldn't say it's enormously unexpected, but I do think it's a pretty big domino as to that transfer portal quarterback market. Keep an eye on where Malik Murphy ends up visiting and maybe even where he ends up at. This is also another report per Chad Simmons. Tennessee edge, who's in the portal, Tyler Barron, Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Alabama have been listed as schools to watch for him. Now, Tyler Barron, extremely productive during his time at Tennessee, 102 tackles, 13.5 sacks in his 4-year college career. For a defensive lineman, for an edge, those are phenomenal numbers. Notice all those schools in the SEC. So this is a thing now. Again, we're seeing a talented individual on a talented team in the SEC hitting the portal and wanting to stay in the SEC. You would think Georgia and Bama would get a fair amount of the early buzz just by nature of what they've done on the defensive line. But hey, look at Ole Miss. We talk about Ole Miss trying to take that next step. Having Princely Uman Mielen on for a visit. Walter Nolan's going to visit. That's the next step now. And credit Lane Kiffin. He's trying to build the trenches through the portal. Builds his roster through the portal, but he's doing a lot on the trenches side of things right now as well. Then Texas had not one but 2 All-Americans on the defensive line this past season. Steve Sarkisian's not playing around. So keep an eye on Tyler Barron. He's a big fish out there, and we'll obviously talk more about him as we get more of a gauge for where he could be headed. This is just a fun storyline as a whole. Drew Pine going back to Notre Dame, not to play football, though. Good for this guy, man. Going to get his degree at Notre Dame. You remember Drew Pine was previously playing quarterback at Notre Dame in relief of Tyler Buckner. Didn't do a bad job, I thought. Kept the ship afloat for the most part. Ends up transferring to Arizona State. Gets some time there. It doesn't work out. He says, I want to go get my degree from Notre Dame. Thought that was a notable transfer portal name that popped up there. Something that we should probably at least reference a little bit during transfer portal season. Now, here's the big news. And we'll do a full segment on this later in the live show, but I wanted to make sure we touched on this early on. Kyle McCord is moving on from Nebraska. Now, I want to make this very clear. This was not a decision where the staff said, hey, Kyle McCord, here's the deal. We don't have space for you anymore. I talked to folks very close to Nebraska that said they would have loved to grab Kyle McCord via the portal. Guy's lost like 3 games since the 7th grade as a starting quarterback. All right, dude's a winner. Say what you want about his time at Ohio State. Dude is a winner, proven commodity in the Big Ten Conference. Remember, as he was on his visit at Nebraska, the rumbling started to break that Dylan Raiola maybe, just maybe, was going to flip his commitment from Georgia to Nebraska. That's another 5-star quarterback. And the rumblings, or the way that you'd have to think about it, is adding Kyle McCord into a situation like that, where he just came from Ohio State, where he had to fight and scratch and claw for his job. You would imagine he would want to end up somewhere where he's able to kind of be the guy and know he's going to be the guy and be built around, and not have this whole thing where he goes through another high-profile quarterback battle. I think Kyle McCord just wants to spin it and doesn't want to do all the extra stuff with the quarterback battle and have other buzz around a 5-star quarterback behind him. So we'll see if that actually even ends up happening with Dylan Raiola. He's visiting this upcoming weekend to Lincoln, but very, very notable because, again, Nebraska, they wanted him. So, again, we'll talk more about that here in a second, what that means for Nebraska, what that means for Dylan Raiola, how you should feel if you're a Nebraska fan, but that's kind of the juice as of late out of the portal. And right now, man, it doesn't take a break, so make sure you keep it locked right here so you don't miss a minute of the portal coverage here with us at On 3. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On 3 YouTube channel.